She was 21 years old, standing outside a locker room, and she had no idea that 8,000 people were about to cry watching her play tennis on a screen from the other side of the world. No trophy, no final, just a fourth-round match. And still, an entire nation stopped breathing. If you think that sounds impossible, wait until you hear what happened next, because what I am about to tell you is not just a story about a tennis player. It is a story about a girl who left home at 13 years old, disappeared into a foreign country with nothing but a racket and a dream, and came back as something nobody expected. And somewhere in the middle of all this, one of the greatest tennis champions in American history looked at her and said something that shook the entire sport. He did not just praise her. He said he was all in. And then he said 5 words that tennis fans are still talking about. This is a movement. Stay with me till the end, because the final part of this story will completely change how you see pressure, fame, and what it really means to carry a country on your shoulders. Andy Roddick has seen it all. He was world number 1. He won the U.S. Open. He watched young players rise and burn out more times than he can count. So when a man like that looks at a 21-year-old and refuses to call her just talented, when he calls her a movement instead, you know something rare is happening. And this is where our story really begins, not with a trophy, but with a question. Why does the entire Philippines stop what they're doing every single time this one girl steps on court? Her name is Eala. And to understand why Roddick reacted the way he did, you first need to understand what she represents to millions of people who never care about tennis before her. For most fans, watching tennis is simple. You watch, you check the score, you move on with your day. But with Alex, something different happens. Her matches turn into family gatherings. Flags appear in stadiums thousands of miles away from where she is actually playing. People wake up at 3 in the morning just to watch a set. And during her historic Wimbledon run, nearly 8,000 people packed into an arena back home just to watch her play a fourth-round match on a giant screen. Not a final, not a trophy ceremony, a fourth-round match. Think about that for a second. That kind of reaction does not come from rankings. It comes from something much deeper, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that is. But before we go further, I need you to do something for me. If stories like this move you, if you love watching an underdog fight against impossible odds, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because trust me, what happens later in this story is a part nobody expects, and I do not want you to miss it. Subscribing takes 2 seconds, but it means you'll be here for every twist coming up, and there are a lot of them. So, let's go back to the beginning. Alex left the Philippines at just 13 years old. She moved to Spain to chase a tennis dream in a sport where almost nobody from her country had ever reached the top. Every single step forward, she had to build a path herself because there was no path already there. That is exactly why her wins feel personal to millions of people. When she wins, her supporters are not just watching a scoreline. They are watching proof that someone like them, someone from a small tennis nation, can walk onto the same court as the biggest stars in the world and belong there. Roddick understands this better than almost anyone alive because he lived through an era where legends like Serena Williams, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic did not just win matches. They made people fall in love with the sport itself. And now he is watching Eala potentially open that same door for millions of Filipinos who never had a reason to watch tennis before. But here is where the story gets complicated. And honestly, this is the part that made me want to make this video in the first place. Because there's a dark side to all this love. The same fans who give Alex her strength are also capable of creating pressure that grows faster than her career possibly can. Every match starts to feel historic. Every bad day turns into a national conversation. And every loss raises a painful question. Was the rise even real? Keep that question in your mind, because it is going to come back later in a way you do not expect. Let's talk about Miami 2025, because this is the moment everything changed. Alex stunned one of the most dominant champions of her generation in straight sets. It was not just a win. It was a moment the entire tennis world had to stop and ask, who is this girl? Social media exploded. International outlets rushed to explain her story. Old junior clips and interviews suddenly became front-page news. But that victory did something else too. It created a standard. Once you beat one of the best players in the world, people stop asking if you can compete with legends. They start asking why you are not beating legends every single week. And that is deeply unfair. But it is also exactly what happens to every young star the moment they get their first signature win. Then came the U.S. Open, and this is where things almost fell apart completely. Alex was still chasing her very first Grand Slam main draw win. She faced a seeded opponent and found herself trailing 5-1 in the final set. The match looked completely over. One more loose game, and her tournament would end in heartbreak. But she did not fold. Point by point, she clawed her way back, and the crowd felt the entire momentum shift in real time. It became one of the most talked-about comebacks of her young career. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. That comeback created a brand new expectation. From that day forward, fans believed she could escape absolutely any impossible situation. Sounds like a gift, right? But what happens the day she cannot escape? What happens the one time the miracle does not come? That is the exact tension we are about to walk into at Wimbledon. And trust me, it gets intense. Alex entered Wimbledon as the 29th seed, the very first Filipino player ever seeded at a Grand Slam in history. She won her first round. She survived a scare against a tough opponent after dropping the first set. And then she walked onto center court to face the very player she had already shocked once before. The first set alone lasted 84 minutes. The tiebreak went all the way to 11 points to 9. Every single rally felt like it carried the weight of an entire nation behind it. She was not just trying to win a tennis match. She was trying to control her own emotions while millions of people back home treated every single point like history in the making. And somehow, she stayed calm. She won in straight sets. And what happened next was pure chaos in the best way possible. Flags flooded timelines. Headlines exploded overnight. Fans started calling her fearless. And some began whispering that they were watching the future of women's tennis unfold in real time. By the time she reached the fourth round, that watch party of 8,000 fans back home became the single clearest symbol of what people are now calling Eala Mania. It was beautiful to watch, but it was also incredibly heavy to carry. Imagine being 21 years old and knowing an entire arena filled up back home just because of you. Imagine glancing toward your player box while millions of people are living and dying with every single point you play. Now imagine trying to make one clean decision on break point while the hopes of an entire country that has never experienced this before is sitting directly on your shoulders. She fought through 3 brutal sets in the fourth round, and then the run ended. She left Wimbledon without the trophy. But here's the part that truly separates real loyalty from temporary hype. And this is honestly the most powerful part of the entire story. The celebration did not stop. She came home without a title, and she was welcomed like a champion anyway. She received recognition at the highest levels back home. Her family stood proudly beside her. Cameras followed her everywhere. Her ranking climbed to a career high. The loss did not shrink the attention around her. It actually grew because she was no longer an underdog trying to prove she belonged. She had already proven it. Now every opponent studies her patterns. Every coaching team prepares specifically for her. Every single crowd waits, holding its breath for the next impossible comeback. And that right there is where Eala Mania becomes genuinely complicated. Because the louder the support gets, the harder it becomes for a young player to quietly develop and make mistakes without the entire world watching. A weak serving day can turn into a national debate. One difficult loss can become proof the pressure is simply too much. One strong win can instantly spark predictions of a Grand Slam title. She cannot ask her fans to care less. She cannot pretend a whole tennis world is not watching her every single move anymore. So here's the real question this video has been building toward this entire time. Can she use the energy of millions of new fans as fuel without letting their expectations quietly control every single match she plays? Stay with me, because the answer to that question might completely surprise you. Here is what most people get wrong. The obvious answer feels simple. Ignore the noise. Block out the expectations. Pretend nothing outside the court matters. But what if that answer is actually wrong? What if the energy surrounding her is not something she needs to escape from at all? What if it is actually the exact thing that makes her different from every other young player in the world? Most rising stars spend years desperately trying to build a connection with fans. They climb rankings and hope people eventually start to care. Alex is living through that entire process in reverse. People already care before the Grand Slam final, before the trophy, while the ending of her story is still completely unknown. And that changes everything about how her career actually feels from the inside. Tennis is one of the loneliest sports on earth. There are no teammates to hide behind. No coach can walk onto the court and fix a broken moment for you. Every single decision belongs to one person alone. But when Alex looks up and sees her country's flag in the stands, she is not just being reminded of the pressure. She is being reminded that she is not alone out there, and that, more than anything else, might be exactly what Andy Roddick recognized before almost anyone else did. Because here is the real twist in this entire story, the one I promised you at the very beginning. The clearest proof of everything we just talked about came after she lost. Sports usually measures influence through winning. When the trophy gained the followers, filled the stadium. But at Wimbledon, she lost in the fourth round, after 3 brutal sets, with no trophy and no perfect ending waiting for her. And the connection with her fans did not disappear. It grew stronger. That tells us something the entire sports world often gets completely wrong. This kind of loyalty was never built around perfection. It was built around progress, sacrifice, and the courage to keep trying in front of millions of people who are watching every single step. So why did Andy Roddick really go all in on Alex Eala? Because he saw something that cannot be measured by rankings or trophies at all. She is not just winning tennis matches. She is giving an entire generation a reason to fall in love with a sport they never thought belonged to them. And that is a kind of power that very few athletes ever get to hold. The expectations will keep growing. Opponents will study her more carefully than ever before. Every major tournament from here on will bring louder questions and heavier pressure. But if you have watched this entire video, you already know the real question was never whether she can satisfy every single fan. It was always whether she can keep growing while the whole movement around her grows even faster than she does. And whatever happens next in her career, one thing is now impossible to deny. She is no longer just chasing a place inside tennis. She has already built one. If this story moved you even a little bit, make sure you're subscribed because the next chapter of this journey is coming, and you do not want to find out what happens from someone else first. I will see you in the next video.